Did you know a lot of us pay some of the cheapest rates for electricity in the country? But tonight, the King 5 investigators expose those low bills come at a price. Salmon and orcas are disappearing, and Native Americans are suffering devastating losses.
And it's because of Seattle City Light. King 5's Susanna Frame explains in her new investigation, Skagit, River of Light and Loss.
The Seattle skyline behind me is partially lit up by power generated 100 miles away from here on the Skagit River. That's where Seattle City Light operates 3 dams for hydropower. Well, that's pretty much out of sight, out of mind for people here. But tribes that live in the Skagit Valley and federal regulators say that project is hurting fish and Native American ways of life, and that something needs to change. It sounds like you feel as though the city of Seattle has stolen this river from you.
Absolutely, yeah. They've taken a lot from this tribe for the last 100 years, and the tribe is not going to take it anymore.
The Skagit River is one of the treasures of the Pacific Northwest. It's the largest river in western Washington, the only one that's home to all 5 species of Puget Sound salmon. It's the #1 food source for the beloved orca. And it is, without question, the heart of the Upper Skagit Indian Tribe.
Our people have resided in the Upper Skagit Valley for literally 10,000 years now.
Scott Schuyler is the Natural Resources Director of the Upper Skagit Tribe, which is based in Sedro-Woolley.
The Skagit River is the lifeblood of my people. The salmon are also part of that lifeblood.
Nearly a century ago, major change came to the free-flowing Skagit. Seattle City Light built 3 massive dams in the middle of it for hydropower. Since then, the Skagit powers up about 20% of Seattle's lights at a bargain price. City Light customers pay less than half of what residents do in cities such as San Diego, New York, and Boston. And that's great. Who doesn't want inexpensive power that doesn't cause air pollution? But that's not the whole story. In a 3-month investigation involving dozens of interviews and a review of more than 1,000 pages of government records, the King 5 investigators have found there's a very dark side of generating light here on the Skagit River. The utility denies it's to blame, but since the feds last relicensed Seattle's dams in 1995, 3 species of Skagit fish have landed on the endangered species list: bull trout, steelhead, and Chinook salmon. And in 2005, orcas, who depend on Chinook salmon from the Skagit to survive, were also listed as endangered. It's well documented by federal agencies that dams can hurt fish by blocking off habitat they need to spawn and grow. Seattle's dams choke off nearly 40% of the entire river. A river the Upper Skagit say is the soul of their culture. They call themselves salmon people. But with salmon sliding toward extinction, the tribe says Seattle is exploiting all that to them is sacred.
The taking of the river, the impact to our salmon, the desecration of sites that are important to us. This is cultural trauma.
Is the city of Seattle exploiting indigenous people for hydropower, for cheap power?
I can absolutely tell you that the people of Seattle and Seattle City Light we have no intention of exploiting the people in the Skagit Valley, the tribes that make their home there and who have established their way of life there.
Deborah Smith is the CEO of Seattle City Light. She says they have a responsibility to their ratepayers, but also to the tribes affected by their business.
If they feel exploited, then that's something we have to work on. Our commitment is to continue to learn, to have an open mind, and as we do so, to change our position.
In public messages about the Skagit dams, City Light says they're helping, not hurting fish. They label themselves the nation's greenest utility, environmental stewards to Mother Nature.
We operate our hydro projects in a fish-first manner.
On top of that, the city says they're not harming salmon because the fish never lived that far up the river anyway, even before their dams went in. They say steep canyons and enormous boulders form an effective natural fish barrier. This is where Seattle City Light and their science says there's no way that right there fish could get past that boulder. In your scientific opinion, is that true?
No. not at all.
John Paul Shanahan is the Upper Skagit Tribe's top biologist. He says for decades, the utility has gotten away with not providing a way for fish to get over their dams, like building a fish ladder, by sticking to their guns. That historically, salmon couldn't swim past the nature-made obstacles below their dams.
What is your reaction to that?
It's kind of like big tobacco when they used to say smoking's not bad for you. It's like big hydro saying fish never got up here. It's the Pacific Northwest. Fish swim upstream. That's what they do. This is not an insurmountable barrier to salmon.
Key for the Upper Skagit, they want Seattle to conduct a study to find out if fish ever swam past the entire dam area. If it turns out they could, Seattle may be on the hook to spend millions of dollars building a fish passage system. So far, the city will not agree to the study.
We're asking them to join with us on a scientific inquiry about fish. I don't know what's so dangerous about that.
The Upper Skagit Indian Tribe isn't alone in its demand for a study. Public records show every single agency involved with the damming project agrees with them. U.S. Fish and Wildlife, the State Department of Fish and Wildlife, National Marine Fisheries Service, the National Park Service, the Bureau of Indian Affairs, the State Department of Ecology, the Swinomish and Sauk-Suiattle tribes, and more. All these groups on one side with only the city of Seattle on the other, so far refusing to agree to a comprehensive study on fish passage.
Only Seattle, the one agency with a financial interest here, saying something else. I mean, what does that say to you?
Well, it says we need to listen more, and we are starting that process. That's what we're doing. We're listening, and we're going to approach the discussion with a completely open mind.
The small Upper Skagit Tribe knows they're up against a powerful city and utility, but they say they won't stop fighting until they get their river and salmon back.
The Skagit helped build Seattle into probably the greatest city on the West Coast. And we have an expectation now that that's returned to the Skagit. The Skagit is in desperate need of help right now. And we're hoping the city government now sees fit to start looking at a return to the Skagit and helping us rebuild the Skagit to the greatest river in the Puget Sound.
No one is saying that Seattle should shoulder all the blame for fish in decline in the Skagit River. Of course, there are other factors like climate change and other types of human development. All of those stakeholders on the other side, all they're saying is they want the city to come to the table in good faith and agree to do their part. In Seattle, Susanna Frame, King 5 News.